2 seconds. Let me get out of there. It's just prepping. Let me go left here. Well, hey everybody, welcome. I have Chris Lumry on. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Theresa. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We're talking in this Create Talk about the power, really the power of what can happen as we create. How can it shift and change culture? And you are at the Sundance Film Festival. How's it going there?
It's been amazing. And one of my favorite parts of Sundance is it draws in perspectives from different parts of the world. And I'm here with an organization called Windwriter Institute, which is the official faith-based partner of Sundance. And they actually bring in people intentionally from different worldviews to share their films, talk about their process, to really honor and celebrate creativity in everyone, because it is a divine gift that we all carry in different formats, but to create space for conversation. And one of the most interesting things is that it kind of gives you a sense of what people are creating films and story around reflects where culture's at. And I was just at a lunch with someone and we're talking about, you know what, one of the gifts of this is whether I love what the stories are, whether they are things I agree with, things that are challenging, offensive, things I really want to support. It's a great thermometer for where things are, and it inspires me again, afresh and anew, Theresa, for the power of creativity to release hope, love, and truth in the world.
I agree. And I think if we don't think that we belong there, then we won't go there. If we don't think that we're supposed to be there. And so many times, and guys, please comment, let us know where you're from, what your name is. We want to do some shout outs. And if you have any questions for Chris, but in this context, what's really important is that we belong in culture. I mean, that's such a kingdom principle. And if we come in and try and shift the culture without knowing who they are, and without our stories being stories of hope and healing and redemption and real raw stuff. I mean, what I love it when you read the Bible, we get the unedited version, Chris. Like we get like what happened with Bathsheba and David. We get Moses having slow of speech and not feeling very comfortable or confident. We have Peter denying Christ. It's not like sugar coated. And so that's what we want. We want to know who Jesus is, but we need to know the real, raw, unedited version of what that looks like.
Yeah, and that's it's grace. We know grace is amazing, but it's the applications and the experiences of grace that just bring for me that wonder back over again. And the same way that creativity can take things that are broken and imperfect and build something beautiful and new out of them through this gift. Great, that's what grace does in our lives. And it's a superpower that when we experience it as people of faith, and I know there's people watching this who may not necessarily share that perspective or worldview, but in the work I've done with people from a lot of different backgrounds around creativity, we don't always use that language, but it's grace. It is undeserved connection. And part of grace is just being present. It's this idea of I'm going to connect with you. I'm going to maintain relationship with you, regardless of how aligned I am or how much in agreement I am. And it's interesting because it's that same experience of grace that can be rocket fuel for a creative process, where grace celebrates us as we are right now. And it also gives us courage and gives us permission, like it's fully celebratory of the personal stage that we are in our creative process, in our life process, our life journey. But it also gives us the sense of safety and security that inspires honest looks at where can I grow? And it's that kind of combination that we actually need. That for me, it's a superpower for the creative process when you can have both that permission to be open and honest for feedback and growth in the refinement process, but also to be able to feel fully celebrated and feel that experience of connection in the moment. And I think those are things that, how do I say this? That again, the words of them are powerful, but it's the experience of, it's not just a concept, it has to be an experience. And ultimately we know where that connection and where grace comes from. But it's the experience of it that changes our lives.
Absolutely. I think I was just speaking in Hawaii last week, and I think one of the concepts that kind of is missing from a lot of our cultural background in in Christianity is this thing of we're a human doing versus a human being. And a lot of us start with like, okay, because I did that film, I'm valuable, or because I did this or whatever, when God says, no, 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 you're valuable because you're my child. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but people might not know about this Ignite conference. I'm going to share my screen because you're going to be speaking this weekend, Saturday, all day event. There's still room for you to come. We want you to join. And we love it because you're going to be showing so much of what you're just sharing right now, but we want people to know about exactly what you'll be talking about and what you feel is next to help people ignite their God-given creative destiny. So share a little bit about that.
My main session is focused on activating creativity in our careers and in the business world, but you can replace kind of any area of vocation. The book I wrote, Creativity Unlocked, helps recognize that we're all creative. To create is just to bring something new into existence. And creativity actually releases joy chemicals in the brain. There's neuroscience and research around it. It's one of those applications, like we know, where concepts and truths that we know from scripture are applied and they're showing up in science as well. So we're going to talk about how activating in small steps, little opportunities for creativity in many different industries and fields can spark this natural reward system that in the business world, they've done research on how intrinsic motivation, meaning naturally occurring motivation, leads to increase in performance, satisfaction, resilience, all these positive things. And so my goal for people who listen and join for the conference is to have not just inspiration on creativity, which is amazing, but some really practical tools to say, can I actually show up better in my work or even outside of work, in any place where you feel like you're creating, where you're bringing something new into existence, that I can actually find this natural reward system that naturally helps me persevere, find joy in that. And it also really helps bring clarity for our careers. Oftentimes we can have a heart to influence a sector of society, but we're talking a lot about how what brings us naturally occurring joy that we find through our different creative expressions, again, in the arts, outside the arts, there's a lot of great information there as we're navigating our sense of purpose and calling in the world. And then my breakout session, all the caffeine today, is focused on the redemptive aspects of creativity. And I think it might be the next slide now. This is my main.
This is the main one.
Sure, there's another one.
Okay, I don't think that we have one on that, so I'll stop sharing.
Oh, no worries.
About that one, yeah.
Oh, good. So yeah, the breakout is on the redemptive power of creativity and how the most difficult, painful, or the daily inconveniences of our lives are the perfect ingredients for creative discovery and joy. And that can be, for me, I didn't know I was creative until I went through a really low season. And I'll be sharing about that, how the most broken season of my life led to this rediscovery of God and led to this discovery of creativity. But also, Theresa, I can tell you story after story of how small inconveniences, delays that seem like, oh, why did this happen, become this beautiful avenue for creating connection with people or creative inspiration or resilience. And it is a game changer because we know the creative process can have its ups and downs, but there's more treasure laden into the difficulty than we might be seeing right now.
And I love that because we need to understand that in our culture, if I was going to talk, and please comment on this, guys, if I was going to talk about what we go through, we look at the things that don't go our way and we go, oh, that's because God's not working. Or, I mean, you could say that with Moses. Well, gosh, I try and save the people, kill this Egyptian, and what happens? They want to kill me. Like, there's this thing where we don't understand that God always wins. And that his story of what he's weaving, all things work together for good. He really means that. In some of the things, like you said, like I remember when, Chris, I fell on the ice and I was overseeing second year at the time in the creative arts of Buffalo. And I fell on the ice and I cracked my head from here to here, just like a walnut, had to be rushed to surgery. And they didn't know like if I was going to make it or whatever. And God healed me. But I felt like he had given me something. And it was this ability to have time with the Lord where I could just be with him. And his love came in such a powerful way, not by doing, but by being. And that really set me up for some incredible things. I also started hospital ministry with art and music as well because of what I went through. And so a lot of times we go, oh, that's not, but no, God actually uses it for his glory, and it's so powerful.
Yes. Yeah. So one of my priorities for this year is about 5 years ago, a little more than that, I started a nonprofit that does storytelling to reframe recovery from addiction or mental health challenges as opportunity. Because many people, we know the cost of addiction. It's actually, we've had some of the worst years statistically the last couple of years. It is taking
Yes.
lives every day and it's horrific. And at the same time as we need to understand the cost, we also need to change some of the conversation around the fact that this is where people find internal transformation that helps them show up better in their families and network. And there are millions of Americans and millions more people around the world who are living in recovery. And this is all a little bit of a soapbox, but we're launching a feature-length documentary this year. And none of this, like this whole process, the reason we're at Sundance, partially is because I was in addiction myself about 7 years ago. And I was in a really low point. And it was that space that led into encountering God. And it gave me the sense of purpose and passion where I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm the best person. I may not be the most skilled or trained person for this. I didn't have any training in film. And yet I can't stop talking to people about how how sad it is, but how much opportunity there is for transformation. And that's what kind of gave me the courage to take the next step. And Theresa, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, the importance of growing in excellence. I'm so thankful for the amazing people we partner with. It really, creativity does thrive in community. That now years later, we stumbled into the opportunity to share an incredible documentary story that we didn't know was going to be feature length when we started filming it. And I really want to just highlight that our team's been a part of this, but it's really powerful because the people that we're featuring are incredible. And the transformation happened set in Alaska and set in some really beautiful, but also some real places where there's a lot of challenge with addiction. But the folks that are there are change makers and some of those amazing, inspiring people who operate with excellence. And what's interesting is this whole project, my own passion for film got activated through this season of difficulty personally. But even in our filming process, we had to push back our dates 6 months. We filmed during COVID. It would look like a short-term defeat. And over the last 7 years, this has been one of the themes of just waiting to see if it's not good, then there's probably good that's coming. As we just say, open and connected. We end up filming 6 months later, and we filmed with the former governor and our protagonist 10 years to the day of her release from prison and her recovery date. And she is one of the most incredible change makers. Like what she carries, we all need. I'll just say that right. Like her experience of grace, what she walks in. And it was one of those things where we were in tears that day filming. So you couldn't have set up even the timing of it to make happen, but it came through delay. And even in our post-production process, our philosophy with this nonprofit is to make sure that the wellness of people we're featuring is our first and primary goal. And we're capturing stuff that's super personal and super vulnerable. And we've been on now a 6-year journey of capturing these stories. And so we have a whole process in place to go step by step, because not only do we not know, but sometimes people when they're sharing their story don't know necessarily their emotional capacity or what's going to happen in their journey. And when we filmed summer 2021, I wouldn't have anticipated that we would still be in post-production now. And yet we've seen over the last year and a half that it has been the setup, even where I'm this week, so that we can learn as an organization and we're better prepared for the launch of this powerful story. But also, the people that we're featuring, there's things that we might be able to incorporate, and we're still in this ongoing process now that we wouldn't have been able to a year ago if we tried to rush through it. And so what you're saying about earlier, it's really, I think there's also retraining for us of our mindsets shifting to be more flexible and more creative in nature, in the same way that God is so creative and how he's working for good, things that either look really bad or just straight up are sad, tragic, horrific, that are part of the pain in the world that we live in.
I think and if you're resonating with this, please let us know in the chat. But I wanted to because I want to get into your story more, but I just want to say this for people that are listening. It's like God has purposes beyond what sometimes we see, because we've fought, and these addictions are just the things that you're going through in your life, or the fear or the anxiety is because of early trauma that has happened to you that hasn't been seen. And part
Yeah.
of this beautiful discovery of knowing God is this place where we get to show him everything about who we are, but then we get to be in a community of people that accepts us for who we are, which is why we have the Ignite conference. And but in that place where you're building that container of what does it mean to really tell the story, it's like the beauty is when you see a life that has been broken and then you see the grace of God come in, there's no other way that could have happened. And it gives
Yeah.
glory back to God in a way that just striving by yourself can't. And some of you guys are great strivers, but God doesn't want you to strive. He wants you to relax and enjoy his presence. So yeah, but
It's so good.
I'm going to go on to the next question. When did you first start to partner? Joy. I love this
Yes.
joy. It's a third of the kingdom and creativity in your approach to kingdom living and your business ideas and the things that you have been filming and creating. So let's talk about that.
Well, I actually want to jump into this right after you're sharing what you're just sharing there about the process of being known and seen and how healing that is. So for me, joy and creativity came together really in a sense out of a place of I tried a lot of other things and they were awful. And part of my story is that I grew up with a lot of opportunity. I went to Harvard for my MBA, grew up actually in the church. And I, in a sense, looking back, I was creating the whole time. I was creating a career. I was creating through learning. I was creating relationships and friendships in ways that I look back and I'm like, there's some gold in there, but man, there's a lot that I didn't know and a lot of pain that I didn't know how to process, to know that as a person of faith, as a Christian, that I could process. And it came back to me, or it came up full circle. That's probably not the right word for it. But this pain came to a head in this very low season, and it was an experience of connection. And part of honestly too that maybe we don't talk enough about. We talk about kind of an initiation of faith, but this ongoing letting go and this ongoing surrender that's really hard to do if we don't know how good and how present and how close and how creative God is. Or if we just hear me out in this, if we let our circumstances define the hope that we have either in God or for like our lives. And that's why it's interesting. Obviously, we're talking about in the creative process, like true joy sparks where we have connection and where we actually process pain, we're authentic, but it also sparks through beholding beauty and wonder. And in 2016, I had a pretty outside the box experience that led into the sense of deep connection with God. And naturally, childlikeness kind of spurred out of this. Like I experienced the goodness of surrender that I'd been afraid of my whole life. And part of it was simply being in a community, being able to release things and share things and be loved and accepted in that place. Part of it was reading, actually getting better belief systems and theology for myself, my life, for my art and creativity. And part of it was this ongoing journey that created space for these kind of steps to explore, to not have to get it right. Because I've been living my life trying to check the boxes. And I had been to dozens of countries. I'd done very impactful work, quote unquote, however you define impactful, in the faith world, in the social impact world.
Yeah.
I had these degrees. And it was really this discovery of connection, this sense of relationship with God, with myself, with others that created a space for this childlikeness. And I'll just add one more thought into this. Again, I love science and how it intersects with truth and scripture and all these things. I might have shared this before, but they actually have done studies that show that creative function in the brain gets shut down when we have what they call higher level of tongue twister. It's not really. Here we go. Higher level stressors. So low level stressors. If you're like, how am I going to get to work today, or what am I going to eat? Those actually spark our creative function of the brain because we're like, okay, I can solve this problem. Again, it's this whole thing of like problems can actually spark creative solutions. But they found that if the problem or the stressor was something like, this feels like an uncontrollable situation, or this feels like something that's related to social disconnection and social standing, really identity, or disconnection from community, those things can really actually shut down the brain function. And again, it points back to, as you're saying, Theresa, the power of community for the creative
Yes.
process. And
Yes.
it's through people. It's through people. We can, I had this experience that was very personal and spiritual that was impactful, but I also so needed the experience of grace and connection through people.
Yes.
And there's a lot of things, whether it's in kind of the American mindset of, I love personal freedom. It's really important, but it can lead us to isolation and overemphasis on individualism that leaves us disconnected, leaves us hurting and pain, addicted, or missing pieces from through relationships that are actually going to really benefit and fuel our creative process. When I started off, I'm sure this, but I started off, and pretty much everything I'm doing right now is because there's been this divine setup with someone to partner with. As you can tell, I love to talk, and I'm very much a verbal processor. Other people create best more in isolation, but even then, we need people that we can bounce ideas off of. And as much as I get to do some really fun things in the ministry world, in the creativity world, the film world, nonprofit world, I love it. But it's been because of these amazing partnerships and gifts of many people that I've gotten to align with. So I'm really excited for the conference as well, because that's going to be a space to engage in the scene of community.
Oh my gosh, I love it too. I mean, I 100% agree with you. I mean, this is crazy, guys. We have to understand that God, and again, this is just 101 understanding. I mean, God said it's not good for man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper. And he wanted us to produce families. He wanted us to understand his love, because he's Trinity. There's 3 in 1. In the same way that there's something that changes with this abandonment issue, the losses of what we have when we turn inward and we don't turn to him and turn for others to help. There's this independent spirit, which is again very much of a Western mindset. That thing destroys the fabric of how God wired us to be. I mean, even Jesus said, I can do nothing but what the Father in heaven is telling me. And there's this principle of not just hearing the words, but living it out that you're talking about, that really needs to happen. And then you have joy. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, who wants to go to Disneyland and go there by yourself? Like, I'm sorry, it wouldn't be fun, right? Because you have to be with people that you love. The same way with like creativity. It's like you create something so that the people around you can enjoy it. It's meant to be shared. Life is meant to be shared, and that's what brings joy.
It's so good. And it's that tension. You said it really well, Theresa, that again, like, we are so wired for community, and yet there's a personal joy that's so valuable. And for me too, there's space in that process of discovering, this like interest in film podcasts I just listen to for fun, or this like long-standing just sense of joy I get when I listen to electronic music, or this like fiery, like, someone needs to freaking, pardon my language, do something about the perceptions of addiction and recovery. That kind of personal sense of meaning and satisfaction and joy really helped identify and next kind of baby steps that help bring confirmation of like, there's something here to pursue. And I was actually listening to an amazing director talk this morning who's done Marvel films and just incredible. And he was talking about, as he's creating these now, he had a 3,000 person crew for his latest blockbuster. He was like, I didn't make it for them. I made this picture for myself and for my son, because I wanted to actually represent a story that could connect with them. And he was talking about how in the middle of all these accolades and all these things that, people would look to and say, that's going to bring fulfillment, satisfaction. He's like, I can't think about that, because if I do, it's going to rob my creative process. It's going to rob the joy of it, but it also doesn't actually serve what we produce. It really is that sense of like personal connection and joy that we can find, whether we're making films, whether we are supporting our family members, whether we are showing up as a waiter or waitress, or in the business world. There's always opportunities to create, because we're not just creating through our art or even our output. We're creating through our words. We're creating through moments of connection with people. And really that connection, another word for it is love. There's ways that we can actually
Exactly.
show up and create things that are life-giving for those around us, that flow
And
out of what we're experiencing here.
oh yeah, and I love what you're talking about because it is all about connection, about why he made that movie. I mean, you look at Paul Young, why did he create The Shack? It wasn't to have a best-selling book, but it was really for his family. There's something about being honest with like, why am I doing what I'm doing and creating from that standpoint? Because it gives us joy, but it's going to give them joy. And plus it's something that
Yeah.
you can pass on. A couple comments that I wanted us to get to as well. And again, lots of shout outs. Thanks for joining everybody. I love the comments that are coming in from Steve Dow, Krista, all over Navid. Comments, Krista, it's so hard to wait, but God's timing is perfect. I totally agree with that, Krista. Navid, God bless all of you. And this is from Steve too. Shout out Lorenzo from Miami. Lorenzo is a script writer as well, just so that you know. And the question is, how did you find the team that now surrounds you for making films? Good
Yeah.
question.
It's a great question. And so I think that one of the keys for us, whether we're talking about kind of personal growth or the creative process, is to break it down into small steps. And it's easier to do that. Many of us are motivated by big dreams, and those dreams are incredible, beautiful, important, valuable. But it's the translation of those things into small steps that can help us actually build momentum. And there's psychology research that shows that that's actually what helps bring momentum in, whether it's personal growth or other forms of kind of progress, so that we don't get stuck. So for the documentary, we started off. We wanted to really address a need. We wanted to release hope around recovery, and so I started off by simply saying, I don't want to recreate the wheel. There's a lot of amazing organizations out there. Let's go see what's out there. Where can we serve? Where can we come under? How can we help address this problem with the skills that we have, knowing there's some good things there and some things that we don't have? Well, we thought we were going to create a website that was going to be a hub for hope-filled storytelling. But as we looked across, we're like, I don't find the content that we're going to actually put in this hub. There's a lot of amazing content on substance use disorder, addiction, other forms of addictions out there, but didn't quite have the mixture of authenticity and being real about the pain and the hope side.
Yeah.
And we also love, a lot of people find recovery through medical approaches and treatments, which can be a really important part, especially because with fentanyl, which is killing people every day, those drugs are so strong. Medical care can be really, really important for that, and for other aspects of addiction. And we didn't find that there to be a hub that made space for that, and also create space. Not all our stories are spiritual, but made space for people to tell spiritual stories as well. And so we started actually doing work, starting with 3 to 5 minute films. I went through a process, and I could deep dive way too much into the weeds in terms of navigating that. But we started partnering with people on small scale projects. And then that led into relationships that years later, when I'm on a call and realizing we're still a very small organization, realizing that we have a longer story to tell here. Oh, we have this director that we worked with 3 years ago that might really connect with the heart. And for me, I've run this nonprofit for 6 years. I don't really get paid. It's a passion project. I think they paid me $7,000 in 6 years, something like that, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And there've been other forms of provision that have enabled me to do that personally. But we've also found ways to, when we need to, honor through payment, like the people we're working with. And then we've had, as you can probably imagine, a lot of people who have been incredibly generous with their time, with their effort, with their heart. And for me, when I'm thinking about creative collaboration with people, break it into small steps, think about what your next step is, put yourself in position to meet people that not only have a common interest or vision, but to have a common heart. And I feel like that's for me been the most important, finding values alignment and knowing that you're not always going to know that right away, but you can, again, take step-by-step relationships. Jumping into like a contract with someone that's a long-term thing or high stakes that you don't have that relational trust with can be challenging. So taking that time and then look for ways to serve. If you can't find people who want to partner with you and serve what you feel called to do, some of the dreams you have, maybe for the season, but some maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, there's projects we've been a part of that
Yeah.
at times the delay was real, but I'm looking back now, I'm like, I don't think the ecosystem was ready for them yet.
Yeah.
What looked like delay was actually the goodness of God to set us up for things. And so some of the things you might feel this burning passion for, there probably are next steps for you right now, but it might be something that you're meant to steward as you're serving other people in that process too.
Oh, I love that. I think, like, Joshua is a perfect example. Joshua served Moses, and then from that
Yeah,
relationship, he was able to lead them across to the promised land. And I'm sure he thought, who, me? Like, what? I'm sure he went through
yeah,
a lot of, you could tell why did God say, do not fear 3 times in Joshua 1? Well, it's because he didn't see himself in the same way that Moses did. And sometimes,
yeah,
but it was the season, his season then was to jump in the same way. I think the way that, I guess it's this way. It's like, if it matters to 4 or 5 people, and if you can pray and if you can wait and just let God marinate it, it will grow. But if you have to make it to try, if you try and do it on your own, and don't do that. Like, wait until
yeah,
God brings the right players to you. And it doesn't mean, like he said, that the dream isn't there for you. It just means
yeah.
that the timing of the Lord might be a little bit different. Yeah.
And I'd say too, like, don't be afraid to take a small step. Like and like for me, when I was working on some of these projects, there were lots of people that we didn't partner with, but it took a call or a conversation to be like, oh, we've got a common interest. And then as you explore it, like, you know what, this is awesome, you're great, but this just isn't the right fit. And that's okay. And that's sometimes that those small steps can really bring clarity. And if you're taking the steps and the doors aren't opening, it can be a great time to explore rest and also to explore other aspects of your creative calling, because we're all multifaceted.
Yeah.
And that can be part of the goodness and the delay too.
I love that. I love what you're saying. This is so good. You guys need to come to the Ignite conference. This is so good. I have a question for you. You're currently doing this film, and
Yeah.
it's taking you all over the planet, of course. But share some testimonies and also your website. If people want to know more about this
Yeah.
film and how they can support you, share that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we, One Step Hope is the organization, and onestephope.org is the nonprofit that does this storytelling. It's producing documentary. And it's a 501c3 nonprofit. So all donations are tax deductible. That actually really helps us. We filmed a feature documentary thanks to a lot of other forms of support. I think we spent like 40 to 50K in total, which if you look at our trailer, which is on our website, you'll be like, that is amazing. It is top notch. The quality is great. And again, I get to be sharing this, but I am a small part of the amazing team,
Yeah.
and particularly our storytellers who have done it. The other fun thing I want to highlight, so out of this process, I ended up starting a separate company and wrote a book called Creativity Unlocked. And our website's called One Step Guides, because we are all about one step at a time growth in the creative process. And there you'll find more on what we do, bringing the science side and these like very practical tools. We actually have a new workbook that's a companion piece to the book Creativity Unlocked called Creativity Activated. It's going to be launching, I want to say, in like 3 or 4 weeks. It's coming up quick. And we are still looking for 1 or 2 beta test users. So it's really helpful if you know nothing about our work and you'd want to actually try out this workbook for us. I can send you a PDF copy, and you can find me via those platforms. But I also want to just highlight the testimonies. This last year, we took that curriculum and we actually started serving organizations and teams, bringing it into the entrepreneurial space, business world. And it was so fun helping people bridge the, I get so excited, I lose my words sometimes, bridge the gap between, in their minds, of saying like, oh, I see my hobbies here, I see my art here, I see my business leadership here, and I see like family here, versus engaging more of this holistic aspect of, oh, they're all outflows of your creativity. And why not introduce themes that bring you joy that intersect? Why not, if family relationships, they're not always easy. Is there a way to spark joy through creating something with them, through sharing a passion with them, through doing something? Is there a way that, your passion for coffee can infuse inspiration into your business environment?
Come
Is there
on.
ways that you could actually I love coming up, my brain works this way, coming up with different creative challenges. We have a very V1 version of an app as well that has some of these challenges. But one, for instance, could be I'm going to do a different like commute on my work every
Yeah.
day, and I'm going to look for something that inspires me for some form of creative expression, whether it's in
Yeah.
the arts, poetry, painting, or a creative expression could be I'm going to look for a person I can encourage every day or pray for, whatever it looks like.
Yeah.
And so that's what we help people do in teams and organizations. And I just have to shout out, I won't say her name. I think she might be watching this at some point. But she's been part of our Creativity Unlocked community for a couple of years. And recently, there have been these crazy open doors. She left her profession to follow this divine calling. She ended up writing a book about self-acceptance and overcoming self-hatred. It's really, really powerful stuff. And in the process, we've been part of her journey for a couple of years, and she'd written the book before she started with us, but we've been able to kind of help encourage and be a part of her journey. And there's been these doors have opened up where back in the marketing and business world, where she gets to do incredible work, which I won't go into all the detail of it, but it's this form of divine provision that enables her to create her passions and create in this space that's also full of like provision for her, which is one of the things that many of us who are artistically minded or ministry minded can struggle with. And it's a reality. And it's been one of my favorite testimonies. It wasn't just me, it was the amazing people in her community, her cohort that helped encourage and walk her through, be with her in the process of being like, hey, this feels,
Yeah.
it's stretching, we'll say the least. So
well, I mean, yeah, you're speaking my language. That's why I wrote Born to Create, is because I didn't see that anybody was partnering with the supernatural part of who God is, like you're talking about the joy. And so they limit it to just ability when God always gives us more than what we can possibly imagine and wants to supersize really what he has and bring it into family, which is huge. I love this talk. I can't wait for you to be there. I have another question. Give us 3 core values that you feel have set you up for how, everyone can steward the calling and the joy and the presence that God wants to give them in what they create. So I've been waiting to ask you that question. Take out your notes, everybody. Come on.
So some of these are ones we've actually happened to visit already, but I will touch on them again. And I've got a question for you, Theresa, afterwards.
Yeah.
You've been pioneering in the space with creativity and joy and connection. And I always have to say this whenever we're in conversations. I know we didn't have a ton of direct overlap when we were both in Reading, but I've been so inspired and so blessed by what you've done and what you pioneered, what you spearheaded. So thank you again.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been my joy.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, go. It's been my joy.
It's continuing to change the world one life at a time. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'll jump into the question. The 3 that were highlighted, thinking about turning down to 3. One is childlikeness. And I'll just talk about that a little bit, which is it's flexibility, it's resilience, it's open-mindedness. It's you think about kids who are like raised in healthy environments, and there's a freedom to dream. There's a sensitivity and a care for people. There's generosity. That all is kind of like, I think childlikeness, it's a little bit of a cheat because it's all these different pieces together. But that came to mind as one. The second was freedom. And I think this can be something that we need more of, that we talk a lot about, but again, the experience is something that we need more of, particularly for people of faith. Because often our creativity, we tie it into our sense of calling. And yet, as soon as that calling becomes a weight of obligation or pressure, we're actually detaching ourselves from love in some way. We're actually kind of like, it actually hinders the creative process to feel like I have to do this. And so that's one for me that I'm like, I've got to always return. When things get difficult in the process with the company or with the nonprofit, it's really helpful to be like, you know what? There's nothing here that I have to do. I'm fully loved. I'm fully seen. I can just enjoy connection. I can rest. And then that freedom to make a powerful choice to create. It just changes like that perspective. And it feels less like drudgery again. And it feels more like the joy that we know that it can bring. The other aspect of freedom is freedom around topics, subject matter, channels. I've gotten to be in an encourager role for, and personally involved in some ways, in small ways, in different avenues like video games, electronic music, film. Have friends who are pioneering amazing things across the space. And I was a person of faith, a believer for years, and I didn't see the connection between creativity and dance music and calling, or, in video games, different things. And I just say that because there might be aspects of your journey, if you're listening to this, that you've seen, like, I almost feel bad about this interest or this passion or this, like, I like find myself on Wikipedia rabbit holes researching this. I don't know why. It very likely could be an aspect of your creative calling and passion that you're wired to have, or that has come through these experiences that are not an accident in your life. And our creativity thrives best in surrender and in connection with God. So there's still that aspect of it, but there's also this place of recognizing that we have more freedom to create on topics and subjects sometimes we've shied away from, because it's what the world's experiencing. It's what we all experience in different ways that we need to hear about. And the third one I mentioned at the beginning, so I won't go into it as much, as grace. And grace gives us so much permission. It's an aspect of childlikeness to know that right now, if you never creative, you're listening to this, I'm just going to encourage you right now. If you are feeling anything less than fullness of joy and peace around your creative process, just take a moment to remember that it is the joy of God to just enjoy you as you are right now. Not necessarily enjoying if you're in a broken place or just like having in pain. That doesn't bring him joy. But there's so much golden treasure in you right now. You bring God joy. And if you were never to create anything in your life, again, you'd still be loved. And we all need to be reminded of that so that we can operate from this place of grace and joy and freedom in what we do.
Oh, wow. Well said. Did you guys hear that? Freedom, childlikeness, and really grace. Three great concepts that keep us wired to how we're really doing. I think it's important, Chris, it's kind of like you take your temperature to see if you're sick. It's time to take your temperature if you're thriving, and find out where is do you feel free? Do you feel like you're still being childlike? And I love this concept that you talked about. Like, so many of us, we get this understanding, which is not at all scriptural, that somehow I can only choose one thing. I can only paint. I can only do film. That is not true. I mean, you looked at what happened in Exodus 31 with Bezalel. I mean, the guy did everything. I mean, he was like, you want to embroider? Sure. Okay, you want to like make this beautiful, like, tapestry? Sure. You want to, it's like, no, it really is where your passion lies. Some of you have a heart for food. Please create for us, like that look. I mean, some of you have a heart for like design, please, like, and for aesthetics in an environment. I mean, all of it is so vital for you to understand that God loves that about you. There isn't, and I but I dislike the concept that worship is only singing and music. That's not at all true. Worship is something that should engage all of our senses. There could be ways of worshiping God in how you play ball, how you whatever it is that you love. In that context, it's filling you full of joy, and your creativity should thrive in that. So if your creativity is thriving in that, why wouldn't God be there? And so I think that creativity has been so mislabeled as just about performing arts. Creativity is about what you enjoy creating with God, and really being passionate to help others through that process. So good stuff.
So good, Theresa. And again, you're such a carrier of joy in the way that you operate and in the way that you encourage people into this freedom. It's super inspiring.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see this whole new Creativity Unlocked, what you're doing with so many different resources that are out there for you. Please, guys, check out the chat, get his resources, come to the Ignite conference, share about that. And I'd love for you to pray for us. Like, part of, there's something that happens. And of course, Chris was at Bethel in the School of Ministry and is there now. And when I was on staff there before I left, there's something about an impartation that we believe that our desire for this Ignite conference is just not to tell our stories or to give you workshops, but it's for you to go, okay, how can I write my story? How can I be a participant with what God has for me, because we'll never live in your place, wherever you are with your family, but God knows that together we can give you an impartation of grace, of favor, of freedom, and of joy that can help you in whatever sphere you're in. So
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I just bless that as you're listening to this, that you would know again that you're enough, and that there's nothing from your past that makes you unlovable. But actually, that is the power of grace, that you're seen, that you're known, that you're loved. And if you're out there and you're navigating shoulda, woulda, coulda thinking or frustration around delay, I just bless right now the grace for peace and for creative, flexible thinking. And I hope, and even right now, I just bless that there are ideas coming to you that are like, wait, I can see this through a different way. That there would be a shift in your thinking and a sense of wonder and mystery at what's possible. And God, right now, we just thank you for this incredible community. We thank you for Theresa and this incredible organization. And we just bless that there's going to be incredible experiences of connection, fresh peace, fresh joy, fresh permission to create. And that in this process, I thank you also, God, for places where there's been delay that's enabling people to thrive and to discover and to grow, not just in your creative expressions, but in your mindsets, in your relationships, in things that are being set up so that as you're stepping into your creative destiny in different areas, it has a foundation to rest on, and it doesn't overtake what's meant to be the main thing. And God, we just thank you for an increase of healthy family and creativity and community. And if there's insecurity and fear, a fear of not doing enough, a fear of missing out, and a sense of calling that's robbing people from the gift of community and connection, God, thank you for moving, for grace to shift that. And we say all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Woo! Come on. That's so good. I love that. Guys, thank you for your questions too. There will be more on Saturday. So check out www.theresadedmon.com/ignite and join now. Everything is fully recorded. So all the 14 workshops, like what you'll hear from Chris, are recorded, and the main sessions, which you'll hear as well from Chris. But check it out and come. And beta testing, come guys, if you want to help out with that too, whatever it is that you want. So again, share this talk. It's time for us to share. If you've been encouraged, if you feel like the Lord is moving, share this post so that we can get more people engaged in what does it mean to thrive in the presence of God, create out of who we are versus trying to gain acceptance. And come on, Chris, let's see creativity unlocked around the world. Woo!
Let's go. Yes.
Oh,
thank you, Theresa.
You're welcome.
Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Blessings on you guys. See you soon. Bye, everybody.